So thanks everyone for staying back for the final panel of today. We've actually saved the very best until last. All the people in the exhibition hall that can hear this, you're missing out 100%, especially me as chair, because I'm quite modest that way. So we're looking at driving innovation in Scotland, the challenge again. I wasn't that at all. We're driving innovation in Scotland, challenge and opportunity. I am delighted to have an expert panel on the up on stage this afternoon as well. I just want to point out there was a question raised at the AI session this morning, or at lunchtime, if that picture of me was done by AI. It's not. It's actually done on a good day when I've actually combed my hair, and I was quite chuffed about it. And there was no Photoshop either to make me look younger. It was my natural look at the time. So this closing panel, without further ado, we'll take a look at the national innovation landscape. Scotland has a rich history of innovation and scientific discovery. We have world-class universities, a vibrant tech sector, and a growing startup scene. We've also got the best thing in Edinburgh, which is Waverley Station for a train to Glasgow. Tough audience. But it's been a difficult time for progress, with a prolonged period of economic uncertainty punctuated by the pandemic, the cost of living crisis, international conflicts, and squeezed public spending. So this panel this afternoon will take stock of how the innovation landscape in Scotland is faring. We'll examine how the sector has coped with recent challenges and discuss how we can maximise the opportunities and national potential going forward. Joining me for the session, we have leaders from some of our key industries and technology market verticals. So I'm going to start with Stephen, if you want to introduce yourself first, then we'll go along from Jude onwards. So Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Martyn. Hello, everyone. So I'm Stephen Milne. So I work for CENSIS, which is an innovation centre that focuses on sensor, imaging, and Internet of Things technologies. So we're very much focused on looking at the application space and how you can apply emerging technologies to solve business and public sector challenges. So it's very varied, and it's really essential for us that we've got partners, that we can have domain expertise from the partners, and we work with those partners to look at that fail-fast methodology, looking at how the technology can really be applied. And once we've found kind of potential challenges that can be solved by it, how do we look at scaling it? How do we look at underlying fundamentals of the technologies to help drive that and really get to that point where we can see the technology scale into Scotland?
Thanks, Stephen. Jude.
I'm Jude McCorry. I'm the CEO for the Cyber and Fraud Centre.
All right, okay, fine. Short and sweet, just like yourself. Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Meechan. I'm the CEO of ScotlandIS, and we are the trade body and cluster management organisation for Scotland's tech sector.
My favourite and best friend, Trish Quinn.
Hi, folks. That's wearing the introduction, thank you. My name is Trish Quinn, and I'm Director of Strategic Innovation at FinTech Scotland, and I'm my lovely colleague Karen here. We're a cluster management organisation for our fabulous FinTech community in Scotland.
And last but not least, Mark.
Afternoon, everybody. So Mark Wilkinson, I'm the Director for Partnerships and Business Development at the Data Lab. So those of you who may not be familiar with the Data Lab, we're Scotland's innovation centre for data science and AI. And our role includes connecting together the talent we have across Scotland's universities in data science with industry to spin up innovation for economic growth and also for societal benefit.
Thanks, Mark. So the whole purpose this afternoon is to answer the questions that you have. I did actually have some set questions for the panel, but I like to keep them on their toes and hopefully not make any of them cry in the next 30 odd minutes. We're between, it's us between drinks afterwards, so, we want to make it interesting, right? We want to make it, as informative as possible for yourselves as well. I'll kick off with a question for the panel, but please put your questions into it, vote them up, and ask anything you want in relation to the topic, right? Last time we had, will AI get me a girlfriend? Will AI be able to tell me when my avocado is ripe? I'm not interested in that, right? We're not Waitrose shoppers here, right? We're a panel talking about innovation in Scotland, okay? So use that as the context. So feel free to put the questions in as we go. So I'm going to start with recovery, which is probably what I should be in after alcohol, but we held an innovation landscape panel at our 2021 Expo, and the pandemic dominated much of discussion. How is Scotland's tech sector recovering, and what has been the latest impact? I'm going to start with Karen.
So we have been recovering, and actually our survey results this year show that 58% of our members' profit margins have grown. So that brings us back to kind of pre-pandemic, and 38% of our members are saying that their cash flow has grown. So we can certainly see the sector has moved on from the pandemic. We're almost back at pre-pandemic levels. Obviously, some of the industry did not survive, but those that have are, for the most part, thriving.
So I'm trying to get my questions up here as well on the screen. My beautiful assistant sitting behind us. Can you get my questions up on the screen?
One job.
You had one job.
It's on your iPad.
No, it's not. Excuse me a second.
Do you want me to
Technical
sort of you there, Martyn?
I'll start switching on and off again. Give me a sec. Thank you.
Sing a song. Say a wee poem.
Sorry, you got a short break to think of your questions, the answer to the questions. So, panel, in terms of how Scotland technical sector recovering and what's been the latest impact. Do you want to take that one? Karen?
What was the...
That was the question that got you to answer. Does anybody else want to answer on that one, or are you quite happy with that? Okay, fine. How has your area of industry changed since pre-pandemic? I'm going to go to Stephen.
Yeah, I think certainly for us, we're focused on remote monitoring and looking at getting data from assets that maybe you'd have to go and visit for your business and previously. So what we've seen is it's more kind of the understanding from senior management. That buy-in's a lot easier than it was before. People understand why they might need these technologies. So it's less of a kind of hard sell internally. I think previously we had a lot of the technical elements of the business kind of really interested in the technologies, but they always maybe struggled to kind of sell the business case and the ROI up the stream. But we've seen numerous examples across different industries, like one being Scottish Water for compliance. They're looking at monitoring for Legionella across their estate at the moment. And again, that's been fully driven by the kind of COVID pandemic, people understanding that you can save money, understand the benefits realisation, everything like that. So we definitely have seen that getting driven quite a lot. I think we see that in local government as well. Martyn, we're kind of involved with you in local government digital office as well, and it's made a big difference there. I think before it was very much kind of sell what is IoT, what are the solutions, how can it be deployed, and it's very much changed the narrative. It's gone much more towards how can we use it, what can we do, what are the use cases we can actually implement. So it's quite interesting. It's really exciting because it's almost creating that market for companies to sell into. So yeah, it's quite positive from that side for us.
And from Jude, your perspective from cybersecurity in Scotland, and not necessarily, obviously there's risks sort of increased post-pandemic, but in terms of the cyber sector in Scotland, what's your thoughts?
I think people did tighten their cybersecurity during the pandemic in the beginning, because of all of the increase in fraud and also the increase in cyber attacks as well. And then we've had quite a few high-profile attacks since the pandemic. So we had SEPA, that was during the pandemic, and we've had like Sam H and a few others in Able, and then the Western Isles Council. So every time there is an attack, we call it kind of like the SEPA attack, that people do take notice, they do start looking at their cyber resilience and everything as well. But I wish that people would just do it normally, the same ways we do. I spoke in a session earlier on about testing and your resilience plan and stuff like that as well. A lot of organisations have fire drills once every so often. I've never, coming from Northern Ireland, there have been quite a few fires, but I've never had a fire in a building in Scotland. And it was usually in nightclubs, we had them in Ireland. But what we've had is a lot of cyber attacks. So please, people, if you're looking at testing your resilience around fire, test your resilience around cybersecurity as well.
Just before I answer that question, can you put the volume a wee bit? Is that possible? No? For the volume? For the panel, volume?
Well, you can't hear it. That's fine.
I've got somebody from the back saying they can't hear us at the back.
Which one?
From the panel speakers. Yeah, sorry, just put that up for you, for the people that actually put that in. Sorry, technical difficulties. It's the end of the day, right? It's been a long day. Bear with us. In terms of data and innovation and AI then, Mark, what have you seen from the sector?
Yeah, I think if we're talking about kind of pre-pandemic 2020, that we were at a point where we were still very focused primarily on cutting-edge innovation and facilitating and connecting industry with academia on that. As we went through that pandemic piece, there was also an ask from the Scottish Government to say, how do we actually help support SMEs who are looking to be more competitive coming out the back end of the pandemic and the challenges around that. So really looking, how do you create more innovation-ready organisations within Scotland to take advantage of what is a globally competitive talent asset we have on our doorstep. So there was a real switch, I suppose, there to help those come forward. I think if we were looking at 2020, I would challenge anyone to say they were up to speed with generative AI or had heard the hallucination word being used on a regular basis in the data and AI space. So the whole context has changed significantly and continues to change at pace. And on the back of that, we are obviously looking to keep up and make sure we're giving the best guidance in that space as well. I think one of the other key things that has ramped up in profile in the last couple of years is regulation in this space, because people see hopefully the opportunity of AI, but also there's a lot of concern about the speed at which that's moving and whether regulation can keep up. So there's a key focus on that. You may have seen, for those of you that are in the AI panel this morning, you've seen my colleague Steph talking from the Scottish AI Alliance. Now, the Scottish AI Alliance is effectively a partnership between Scottish Government and the Data Lab, and talking about that challenge of speed of regulation versus speed of innovation. I think Scotland has an opportunity to potentially act as a lighthouse case for establishing development and use case of trustworthy, ethical and inclusive AI. I think that's the framework upon which we need to be thinking about when we move forward with these opportunities.
Fantastic. And I know you're new, Trish, into FinTech Scotland, but your view from your short time in FinTech Scotland, what's your view in the sector post-recovery?
We have had an incredible few years in...
So can you move close to the mic, sorry.
Apologies. We've had an incredible few years in 2017. When FinTech Scotland started, there were 26 FinTechs in our cluster. There's now 227. So actually, pandemic accelerated use of an awful lot of our companies' platforms and gave a real opportunity to show what they can do. It introduced different types of partnerships between our large financial services partners and our FinTechs. So actually, it was a really optimum time. Investment last year was running at 300 million, which was a record-breaking year, and 20% of our FinTechs are now internationally trading. So I think it's the topic they work on. We all need money, and we need access to financial products. Still can't hear me. Hang on.
It's not normal for Trish to be this quiet, to be fair. I'll say. I said I wasn't going to pick on you, but carry on.
So that's, yeah.
All right, cool, thank you. So I'm going to go to the questions from the floor, because it kind of nicely leads into the next section, which is progress. So Scotland aims to be a global leader in technology innovation, and we've got a question up here: with remote working and more favourable taxation down south, how do we retain talent actually within Scotland to drive innovation, to progress this agenda? Karen, what's your views from ScotlandIS?
So the whole hybrid working is a challenge, and especially when we're looking at bringing new people into the sector. They don't have that mentoring support that we had pre-pandemic. You're not there with teams who can help you upskill quickly. It is a challenge. However, I think employers in Scotland, certainly after the pandemic, are far more flexible than they've been. They are absolutely looking at how they help that work-life balance for their employees. So it is a challenge. I don't know that anyone has fixed it, down south or here or elsewhere in the globe. But it is certainly something that we're learning and we're working through. And I think as a sector, it's a challenge that we all have, that we're all trying to support. But fundamentally, we want to keep the great talent that we have, so we are working with our employees to make sure that we're offering them those flexible working patterns and additional things to ensure that they've got that work-life balance.
I think, from the perspective of Edinburgh University, it's the second best in the world for computing and robotics, past MIT. And I'm going to go to Mark in terms of data. Obviously, data is the fuel, the oil. God, I hate that analogy, but the fuel and the oil to actually fund AI and digital transformation. What's your views in terms of attracting or keeping talent in Scotland? Because we've got a lot of good, high-quality talent, which we do lose. And how do we retain that from a data lab perspective, do you think?
Yeah, I suppose it's about... Well, I don't think we have any challenge in attracting talent to come here, because they come here to study. Effectively, it's how do you hold on to them after that point in a lot of cases. And to do that, we've really got to create opportunities and jobs here that are attractive. I think the remote working thing can be seen as a challenge or an opportunity. because it does mean that if individuals like staying in Scotland, and there's a lifestyle element to the balance up here with work as well that plays in our favour. So how do you create opportunities for them to stay, either through jobs here or making it easy for there's some visa challenges, I suppose, with some of the international students coming here that we need to have a think about if we really want to retain that talent. So I think Scotland overall has a challenge there, but also regionally. I mean, we're up in Aberdeen quite a lot, and Aberdeen as a city in itself has an individual challenge. How do you keep talent within the Aberdeen region? Sometimes they're losing it out with Scotland, sometimes they're losing it to Central Belt. So it's about opportunities, I think, and making sure that we're driving them, but also, like I say, a little bit of government intervention there is how do we make it attractive and easier for talent to stay.
I think I'm going to come to Stephen with this question, just kind of on the back of that. Obviously, we've got a growing space industry in Scotland now as well. We've got 2 satellite companies in the centre of Glasgow. Who'd have thought it? There's a few rockets I've seen up in Sauchiehall Street on a Saturday night, to be fair. But, with innovation tech and IoT, how do we retain that specialism in Scotland rather than losing it to down south?
Yeah, I mean, it's looking at the hardware expertise. A lot of it is actually about the education piece, because at university level, the curriculum has to have that focus on actual hardware engineering. A lot of the software engineering courses don't look at that as much as they used to. So it's a bit of a skills gap we're certainly starting to see around embedded software becoming more popular. It's becoming quite a hot recruitment market at the moment. So I think it's again showing that opportunity to, at that more junior level, at that student level, to say, look, you can work in robotics, you can work in the space industry, you can see this. It's not about just purely software. You'll get that interaction across lots of different industries, lots of technologies. And for me, it's setting out that vision and that kind of ambition that they could potentially have in those sectors.
I'm going to go slightly off topic because there's a questions coming from the floor as well, and it kind of links back to kind of the studying stuff and to bring that talent in. We have got a very balanced panel up here today, which I'm really glad to see. And if you look in the room, we've still not got diversity and inclusion kind of covered, which is one of the questions. How do we get more, diverse and inclusive collaboration and solutions? I mean, as a dad of a 20-year-old who was the only girl who did computer science in Hires and Nat 5, and is now doing business in HR because she didn't want to go into a male-dominated industry. That was her things, despite her mum and I, that's right. Ex-wife and I meeting in Compact 20-odd years ago. I was too. How do we attract that diversity and inclusion into the workforce?
And so for us, there's lots of programmes and innovative things that are out there, but absolutely we need more girls into technology. So what we've done, and we're not the only people who are working in this area, ScotlandIS have absolutely focused on diversity for a number of years. We've got our Digital Critical Friends programme, so that goes into high schools from first and second year, and we work with STEM ambassadors and Tech She Can, and that's all around opening the eyes of our pupils into opportunities in the tech sector. But it's not just, here's jobs, you can come and be a coder or you can be a data scientist. It's, here's what you do, here's what these jobs are. But it's making those connections. So, I love psychology. Well, that's great, come and do UX because we want to know why it's a green button and not a red button. So it's about making those connections for them, but it's also about exposing them to the various pathways. You don't need to go to school through to 6 year to university into the sector. There's a whole host of ways to get in. Kids are very excited in primary school. There is no difference or not as big a difference in primary school between boys and girls when they're looking at technology. It's when they get into the senior phases that interest drops off, and that's the bit that we need to be targeting so that they follow that right through.
So I've recently met the Chief Executive for Code First Girls, who does a big thing, and they're actually recruiting on behalf of GCHQ at the moment with women in technology to help with the bias and ethical kind of dilemmas for using AI and data stuff for counter-terrorism, etc., and cybersecurity. And going to cybersecurity, I mean, how do we attract that talent, retain that talent in Scotland? Jude, it's all on you.
How do we attract and
how do we attract diversity and talent so we can actually move in that right direction?
I just want to cover off the first point. I think looking from here down into the room, I think the diversity is actually quite good. So yeah, so that's a positive. To attract it and stuff, I think what we need to have is a lot more male allies as well. So dads out there, my husband's a father to 2 girls. He gets a ripping every so often about to his different opinions and the way that he just saunters through life not thinking about how difficult it is for women in tech and stuff, and he is in tech. Being more focused and looking around, and also if you cannot see it, you cannot be it. There's a young girl that, everybody's young compared to me at the moment, a young girl that I mentor, and she came up to me today to say that she has studied maths, repeat, like she's getting her maths exams, and she said that she flew through them, but she didn't when she was in school. I think subjects matter whenever you can see the outcome of it, but if you're in school and you don't see what cybersecurity can be, what data science can be, there's no point in even trying to push it down. Also, one thing that really annoys me, and I don't know where this survey is, but there is a survey that goes around secondary schools that both my girls took part in it to see what their future should be, and the schools roll it out. One of them was told she could be a bricklayer, and the other one was told she could be a truck driver. So both of them were, they basically said that the teachers, this is ridiculous. Why do we have to put in what our strengths and weaknesses are when that's the kind of stuff that comes out? Where's the expectations? Where's the aspirations for, girls in the future and stuff? It should start in primary school. It should continue on in secondary school, and it should also be at home as well. So I'm looking for a lot of male allies to help us out there.
Just another. So I'm just thinking about that kind of titleless tech sector. I mean, if that puts people off, I'm just thinking about my daughter. So my daughter's quite artistic. She enjoys that side of things. She's now doing a course through in Glasgow for 3D gaming and animation. So she's taken. So these tech roles in inverted commas. It's maybe more about not just that in isolation, but how does tech apply to areas you're already interested in? And help them understand what that looks like and the sort of opportunities for roles in that space.
No, thanks. I think we're going to move on just for time's sake and looking at the challenges. We talked about attracting talent, gaining kind of the diversity. We've got that skill shortage, and I've also got a few questions here I'm trying to group together so I can answer them all, round about kind of regulatory challenges to environment against the desire to innovate and develop. I'm going to cover that one off first. How do we get past regulation? We've also got to be in coherence with policy, etc. I'm going to go to FinTech first with yourself, Trish. How do we get past that regulatory body or support regulatory body but still innovate at pace with high risk things like banking?
I'm going to answer you in a different way from the question you've asked.
That is okay.
So we are setting up something called the Financial Regulation Innovation Lab. And we're doing that with our partners across Glasgow and Strathclyde universities. And actually, it's to do exactly that. Regulation at the moment in financial services costs $8 billion a year to service. So if we think about the amount of time, the amount of effort, the amount of people that are involved in that to actually produce not very much. Now, in saying that, regulation is really important. It is designed to protect consumers, businesses, and make sure we are fair and ethical in how we work. But we need to look at how we address the fact it's costing £8 billion a year. And what else could we be doing with those people and that workforce if we could divert some of that and simplify some of that. So we're going to be working right across with our regulators, with other parts of government bodies, with our universities, with the FS sector and with our FinTech community to see what we can do in that. And innovation is going to be the thing, I think, that drives those changes. We use that innovation, we bring up those products, and we show them how they can genuinely simplify some of this. Hopefully that begins to bring down the bill and helps us give people in our industry really exciting other opportunities to work on.
Cool, thank you. I think from a censor point of view, from CENSIS, then you've got regulation in place for medical devices, etc. How do you innovate when they've got set regulations? You've got some proprietary providers out there, I'm naming no names. How do you get past that to make sure we can actually innovate without being locked into certain providers?
Yeah, I think it's that sort of innovation pathway, the journey of it. So you start off with your prototype. We're actually working quite closely with Glasgow University, who has set up a digital health validation lab. And they're looking at that as a full kind of spectrum away from how can you, first of all, speak to clinicians, understand the needs, clinical pathways and then start to build up that early evidence stage. So before you go through the kind of expensive clinical trial phase, if you're going to get a CE-marked medical device, it's what do you need to get in place, what would be the rough costings you maybe need to get them in place. So it's all about that iterative step. I think on the flip side of that, Martyn, as well, we've seen a lot of business being driven by regulation. So things like environmental monitoring, it's almost like creating a new industry, particularly in the kind of ESG space, looking at that as well. So we've seen a lot of kind of potential new ways to drive technology adoption just from regulation. So a lot of the most successful startups we work with have been in the regulated space. So looking at kind of making it easier for companies to comply with the regulatory needs. And I think that it's got its pros and cons on both sides, but it's definitely about looking at it on both sides, both from the opportunity perspective and also how companies can really take note of that.
Well, thanks. I think one of the big things that's come on through some of the questions as well, and something that I get hit with regularly from a local government point of view, funding. How do we attract inward investment and tackling that whole funding and challenge of increasing the funding opportunity to innovate with new ways and ideas? Any of the panel want to pick up that one and see what you think? Yeah, Jude.
I think how do we attract inward investment? I don't think we're very good at packaging ourselves as Scotland. I think pre-pandemic we were doing a really good job with the likes of Scottish Enterprise, Scottish Development International of bringing delegations over to see Scotland. And I see there was a delegation this week for something, I can't remember what it was, brought in. And that's the first time I've seen that. And basically, if we compare ourselves, and there's more questions about other countries and stuff, if we compare ourselves to Ireland, my hometown, they're very good at rolling out the red carpet, at attracting, at working in the countries and basically selling Ireland, and also they're looking at the taxation and stuff as well. I'm not saying Ireland's the perfect place because you can't afford a house there or you can't afford your food, but they are doing very well around attracting companies and also Belfast as well, which isn't as expensive, but they're doing really, really well at attracting organisations and putting that time out there. So yeah, I have a plea to the likes of Scottish Enterprise and Scottish Development Internationals to kickstart that, and the world's a very small place, but Scotland's an amazing place to do business and collaborate.
I think just to add to that, I think if you look at Mark Logan's report about digital in Scotland, there was kind of a request for 2 big expos a year. I mean, there's constant events. This is obviously the best one in the Scottish calendar. But there's things talking about an investment exhibition or expo as well as an innovation expo. How do we get this at Tartan? Yourself, Trish, what do you think?
So I think there's quite a few things here. We've noticed the power of the cluster. That's been huge. And Karen heads up another cluster. And we just talked earlier about how you begin to create a super cluster in Scotland where you're cross-cutting different industries, because it's about how we attract businesses in of all types to Scotland, not just our own type. So I think there's a huge opportunity for everybody here on this panel and way more actually to come together and think about the offer from, if you like, the customer's point of view outside the country. And what we could offer them, and then we filter them in the right ways once they get here. But we've a big job to get them here. And a lot of the work we do with our FinTechs is actually taking them on trade missions, going to big things. Our big one is Money 2020, but big expos around the world to show off our wares. So it has to be, I think, 2 ways. But huge opportunity. Scotland is small. It has a really strong reputation for innovation. So I think organisations like ours coming together can really speed that up, actually, and to support Jude's point around investment. We do need to commit to that, and government need to stand behind that and show the investment. And we're seeing some really good signs. You've got Glasgow Innovation Investment Zone at the moment, where there's lots of accelerator activity. There's various cuts on capital. So there are some tax incentives beginning to happen there. What can we do to really realise that? And look at things like our free ports as well, which are giving different tax incentives. But I think huge room for us to move quite quickly on this.
Yeah. And I think going back to your point as well, I think there's a lot of things happening in different areas, but we don't know collectively what's happening. So I'm on the Data Delivery Initiative Advisory Board, and I don't think anyone else really knows what's happening. Then we're talking about the levelling up funds and all that kind of stuff as well. So what can we do from a Team Scotland perspective to come out and say to sell Scotland in general? And I know the Data Lab are really good at bringing over I don't know because I don't work there anymore, but bringing over inward investors and companies are interested in doing data science and everything in Scotland around Data Fest and stuff. So things like that should be supported if it's not being done on a bigger scale.
Yeah. And we've got, to Kenny Trish's point, ScotlandIS have created SCIA. It's about a mouthful. So it's the Scottish Cluster Ecosystem Alliance, but what that does is that brings together Data Lab, FinTech Scotland, CENSIS, DHI, Technology Scotland, SEED, various other cluster managers or kind of technology and digital groups to forge that collaboration. So if we are shouting as a group in Scotland rather than just ScotlandIS or FinTech Scotland, then that will make a huge difference, and that allows that collaboration also between all of our sectors. So my members won't be able to do it all by themselves, they will require partners. So, you know, that's why we're working together. What we also have to do, and we know as Scottish people we're not great at this, but some of the feedback that we'd gotten from one of our ScotSoft speakers who is from Germany, works in Bahrain just now, is there are huge amounts of great things happening in Scotland that we're all doing, that we're all supporting. We don't tell anybody, and we know this as a nation. So we need to absolutely be amplifying that message. That needs to be out there globally. We keep saying we've got world-class universities, we're a fantastically innovative country, but we just tell each other that.
We don't even tell each other.
So there's a good question that's got eight likes, which is how Scotland's setting itself apart in the competitive tech industry, ensuring we're growing world talent. So what we're saying as a panel then is that we're not selling ourselves internationally as well as we could. We're not actually rolling out the carpet to get that investment.
No.
You look poised. Stephen, are you coming in with
Yeah,
that
I was
point?
going to say, one of the things we've been doing quite a bit is looking at the infrastructure play. So how can you make Scotland as easy as possible to do innovation? So that's like what IT systems do the central government use, what IT systems does NHS use, so that they can be almost a sandbox to allow development and allow that innovation. And I think that's a big piece, just that understanding and having that place you can go to get that information. So that networking piece obviously is massively important, but you need to have these organisations that can kind of act as the glue in the ecosystem to connect up everything together. There's been a lot of talk recently about trying to simplify the ecosystem, and I think for me that's a bad thing because you'll lose that kind of diversity of thought and specialism as well. But it's how can you maximise that collaboration element of the ecosystem to kind of get the most benefit is kind of where I think we need to focus.
There's a challenge here coming up from one of the questions as well, which is under challenges, I would say, is what is the fate of tech newbies in Scotland's digital industry? I mean, Mark, you obviously work with kind of startups and you've got different tier systems with Data Lab, with new innovation stuff coming out of universities, etc. What is the fate for this at the moment, post-COVID?
The fate.
The fate. What is the fate of tech newbies in Scotland's digital industry?
Yeah, I think the number of spin-outs we're getting from the universities is strong just now, and I think there was just under £1 billion invested in last year. I think the fact we have the tech scaler support network now in place, and there's a high profile on that, hopefully helps drive out that support model that is most importantly shaped to the audience. So Anna Stewart's report in the back of Mark Logan's talked about how we reach those underrepresented communities who are entrepreneurs, whether it be women or ethnically diverse individuals, and I think that's an important part. But it does, I think it's a good reflection again of the talent we have here to see the strength of the number of spin-outs and the sort of backing they're getting from a funding perspective. But I think if we were honest, there's probably a lot more work to do there. And to the point we've maybe touched on already, that I think as an ecosystem, we need to get far better at joined up support. So there is a tendency that we operate in our siloed areas, and we can definitely improve on bringing that together.
Karen.
Making it an easier journey to engage and innovate.
Oh, sorry, I saw Karen just ready to come in there. Karen, go for
Sorry.
it.
So, for me, to Mark's point, there's lots of support there for these tech newbies. Absolutely, with tech scalers, with Data Lab, the things that ScotlandIS and Jude and FinTech Scotland and CENSIS and everyone else is doing. The challenge for me is the support when those tech newbies that we want to grow and scale become the SMEs. Where's the support for the SMEs? So we've got lots of support to get you started and get you moving and collaborate, and we've got that. You become an SME, that's where the support falls off, but then we're looking for you to be this next Scottish unicorn. But how do I get from that newbie to that unicorn if there's no support in that middle ground? So for me, that's where the concern is. We can get you there, we can start you up, but where's the support to help you scale?
Yeah.
Cool, thanks. Jude, do you want to come back into that?
I also think that Scottish Government and other agencies as well need to cull the things that aren't working to support those organisations. There's a lot of funding going into. It's a very cluttered marketplace for organisations to find out where to get support. So if you're trying to create a new product, you've got maybe we had this conversation out in Stirling one day. It was like that they don't know, maybe the data lab doesn't exist. They don't know that such and such a bit of investment, and I think we need to be very, very clear as to what support's out there for organisations. Also practical things like office space. You go to New York, you go to Dublin and stuff, there's a huge amount of co-location. We've got code base, that's it. So when we're bringing in inward investments, should we have 10 buildings to go out and say you can actually we're all thinking that people want to work from home. They don't. We still need that co-location space and the co-working space. Fund for investors as well. It's very hard for when you get your first bit of investor to move on to that second level phase. Where are the investors? You shouldn't have to go to the States. You shouldn't have to go to Germany looking for funding as well. These people should be coming into us and looking at what Scotland's got to offer. I think we're very good at startups, but how do we get on to the next bit with the organisations as well? And also maybe cull the organisations as well. Stop giving support to the organisations who are never going to make it and put it into the companies that are going to make it and going to make, where is the next? We're always talking about this next unicorn from Scotland. Where is it?
Okay, I think I've depressed ourselves enough with the challenges, don't you? Should we move on? Right, priorities then. So what is the main strategic goal that you are currently focused on within your area of industry? And I'm going to go to Trish first.
Well, it follows beautifully because we are absolutely prioritising scaling. And it is to put that wraparound support around our companies to take that next step and really grow their businesses here, to stay in Scotland and hopefully trade internationally, get offices elsewhere, but we don't want to lose them from Scotland. So we really have a huge focus in FinTech Scotland at the moment about how we can get all that information, declutter that landscape and make it really simple for people to stay and scale successfully in Scotland. And then secondarily, we're really looking at what we can do to simplify that regulation landscape as well and give Scotland a USP in how we deliver that.
Stephen, you've just got some funding for some great work with a company called the Digital Office of Scottish Local Government. Don't know if you've heard of them before. Fantastic chief digital officer there as well, may I add. Quite handsome too. The strategic focus, it's me by the way, if you didn't care. What strategic goal you're focused on at the moment in relation to CENSIS and sensors in general?
Yeah, again, it's about that scale piece. It's looking at, that specific example is based around, there's a new national platform for alarm receiving in the care sector. So that opens up so many opportunities for kind of startups, existing companies in that ecosystem, because it's quite disruptive. Before it was kind of companies would operate in complete vertical solution, whereas now it's opened up. So we're kind of working with a consortium of local authorities, looking at how we can apply that innovation for scale. So it's very much working with the expert end users, trying to build something that's fit for purpose and looking at how we can kind of take that through that initial proof of concept, that viability, that return on investment stage, but always looking at scalability. And I think having these kind of platforms in place really helps that because it removes a lot of those barriers that might have previously existed in previous years.
Karen, obviously you represent small, medium, large organisations in the Scotland's IT sector. Your thoughts on this?
So much to Trish, our focus is the growth and scaling of our member companies, so those SMEs. So we've looked at, we've got a couple of programmes, Future Ready, that looks at those very small SMEs who have, initially the focus is on the technology or the service, the kind of business element comes as a secondary. So what we've created is a Future Ready programme so that our SMEs can look at, are they finance ready, investor ready, procurement ready. There'll be podcasts, there's some content and things, and it's stuff that they can download quickly and utilise within their business to get to those points. So for us, it's all about what is that support you need. We're off to Bahrain in a couple of weeks with a number of our cyber companies, out to see the opportunities out there, make some of those connections to look at, is there some investment there, is there some opportunities that we can share with the rest of the community. Bahrain is about 10, 15 years behind the curve on cyber, so there's money there. There is a huge amount of knowledge here in Scotland and businesses that are doing great things that are part of all of our networks. So For us, it's about where do we find those opportunities, to Jude's point. Let's make sure that as an ecosystem, we are sharing that out. And some of that we're doing through the SCIA network as well. But that needs to continue, and that's a job for everyone.
I've just checked my diary. I'm actually free in a couple of weeks of my annual leave, and I've just got new Speedos. Do you need somebody to come with you to Barry? Yeah, you're right. Sorry for that mental image.
That other guy,
Very
not
mental image. Mark, in terms of strategic kind of priorities for data and data lab, etc. in Scotland.
Yeah, I'm trying to get that image out of my head, Martyn, before I answer this one. So I think for us, community is important. I think it came up in this morning's panel. A guy from JP Morgan talked about a highly technical community and culture in Scotland, and I think that's a key asset. For those who may not be aware, we have an online community. We have just over 4,000 active members, a really good mix between public sector, private sector and academic, and I think the power of bringing that community together, whether it be at physical events or online, is really interesting. We're starting to see a lot of activity that is happening directly between members rather than us getting in the middle of, so whether it be mentor relationships or people asking questions of the community if they're maybe starting that data journey and they're looking for guidance. So there's a really good kind of feedback loop happening there, and I think community culture within there, we have over 70 countries represented within that community as well. Of course, most of the members are Scottish, but again, there's really good opportunity there to, where we talked before about talking about the really exciting stuff that's going on in Scotland, and how do we broadcast that message. There's an opportunity through that. So that's on an individual basis, and then we just started a partner program last year for organisations, and again, that principle of trying to create environments where it's easy for organisations to engage with the talent community we have in Scotland. And that is working very successfully. We've just gone through, like I say, our first kind of 12-month period. We've got a lot of people renewing and signing up again for that. And again, a broad range from organisations involved, from people like Accenture to CalMac to Scottish Government. So I think things like that for us, I mean, our vision over the next 10 years is to create the world's most impactful data community. And that's us kind of starting steps on that journey. And I think to some of the comments that have already been made, we need to get better at working together within the ecosystem. We are choosing some strategic partner engagements at the moment with like-minded organisations. It's in very early stages, but organisations that we should be proud of here in Scotland, like the National Robotarium, NMIS, CivTech, Interface. There's some really good activity going on. I think if we can work harder at being more aligned, then we can leverage those partnerships to create a better outcome.
I'm hoping that actually answers the question. It's had 6 thumbs up from Anonymous about building culture of innovation. So I'm going to go to the last section because we're rapidly running out of time. I mean, I could spend another. Do you want another hour of this? No, you want to be here? All right, okay. Yes. So collaboration. Are we getting better as a sector overall at collaborating and coordinating around shared goals? Karen, I'm going to go to you from ScotlandIS point of view.
I would say yes. As I say, we've got our SCIA cluster, or our SCIA group, which has probably about 15 different cluster and ecosystem organisations like ourselves, in all with the greater goal of how do we work better together, how do we source these opportunities that then give collaborative opportunities across various parts of the digital and tech ecosystem. So absolutely we are. Could we do even better? Absolutely we could. But between SCIA, we've got the Cyber Scotland Partnership, which Jude and I sit on, and that's a whole other 18, I think, different organisations again coming together. So there are lots of pockets of this. We are starting to join the dots, but there's always more that we can do.
Jude, what do you think from a cybersecurity point of view?
I think it's the only way that we can probably progress, and also from our point of view in the Cyber and Fraud Centre, it's around supporting victims. Over the last 6 months, we pulled together collaboration between Police Scotland and financial services and ourselves to look at how do we better the investigation rate around fraud and cyber. And so cyber, I think, is looked after. Things like ransomware and stuff is looked after very well by Police Scotland. But where we are failing victims in Scotland, and not just Scotland, actually Scotland's got a higher rate of supporting victims than anywhere else, but It's 18% of 18,000 calls that come in is what gets supported and investigated by Police Scotland. So there's a huge amount of victims that don't get supported. So collaborating and taking a different view on it, taking it outside of Police Scotland. So it's not data sharing, it's intel sharing. And if calls come into us around big frauds or, you know, business email compromise, CEO fraud, and also we've had quite a few from high earners and stuff like that as well that have been fraudulently attacked as well. So we've had really good success. We've worked on £10 million of fraud in the last 5 to 6 months and have had £3.5 million of that returned or seized, and also another 2.5 million investigating. There's 4 warrants out for that big one as well. So it shows you the power of collaboration. It shows you that when people say computer says no and because of the data you're not allowed to do this, that what you're looking for is what you're trying to achieve and how can you achieve it. I was in Ireland speaking about it last week, and the banks and stuff are coming up and they're going, how do you do that? How we did it was we got a room full of, or actually just online, a group of probably 10 people who really want to support victims and want to do better in Scotland around victim support. So that's all you really need is collaboration and really good people that want to make it work.
I think just a success story. I'm not going to answer this question because we're running out of time quickly, but just as an aside, working with Jude and the team, you know, helping my team understand cybersecurity, we are Digital Office for Scottish Local Government. There's been somebody trying to fish in the digital office just now, pretending to be me. And thanks to the stuff from Jude and the team knew it wasn't me because the person used please and thank you in the email. So it's a true story.
And spelled their name right.
And spelled my name right as well. Aye, they got a Y in it as well. We've run out of time. There is a question there about what's the success stories and how do we get more of them. If you want to hear about failures, there's a great comedy show at the Glasgow Comedy Festival, March the 23rd at Blackfriars, by a great guy called Martyn Wallace. The show is called Did You AI, Did You? Tickets are on sale next week. Once I get the venue to confirm it all.
You have no shame whatsoever.
I've got to rent an audience, right? So without further ado, without me plugging any more, I'd like to thank the panel. If you give a round of applause for the panel this afternoon, thanks so much.